हे असं करायचं त्या फ्रेममध्ये बघायचं तेव्हा हळूहळू हळूहळू म्हणजे हे समजा हा ग्रुप बोलतोय तर इकडे ठेवायचं, तो ग्रुप बोलतोय तर मग इकडे करायचं.
स्लो घ्यायचं का पटकन घेतलं?
नाही स्लो घ्यायचं. पटकन घेतलं तरी चालेल पण स्लो घेतलेलं फायदा. आणि मी आता टिल्ट लॉक करतो. हे बघ टिल्टचं लॉक येत आहे. पॅनिक करायची गरज नाही. हे टिल्ट आहे नाही, टिल्ट खालीवर जातो ना. तू करून बघ म्हणजे तुझ्या लक्षात येईल. हां फुलवरती कसं आहे तुला पाहिजे तेवढं घ्यायचं. आता हलवूनच नाही हलव. तुला जेवढं हां जरासं खाली घे. तुला पाहिजे तेवढं हलव परत लागतो. हे आपल्या ट्रकचं गिअर नसतं. हे नाहीच येणार आहे. हो नाही येईल मग खाली करायचं. खाली करून असं करायचं. आलं लक्षात? हां हो चालेल ना करायचं ना. ठीक आहे. डिस्कशन करण्याचं काय रेकॉर्ड करायचं त्यांचं त्यांनी मग ते लिंक पाठवलेली आहे ती काय बघणार. काहीच केलं नाही. तुझी शंका बरोबर आहे. नाही ते दिसले नाही मला. रेकॉर्ड करू का? किती वाजले? कर सुरू रेकॉर्ड. ते कधी करते
important pillar of world order. This much I have written.
What you said in the 50s, and after that being controlled. So, but the US very interestingly did not really want information to be controlled. Well, it's not just really want information to seem like it's being controlled even after 1950. So the whole point to the whole point is that the counter to communism was communication. So it's still the, I think it's still the same kind of ideology, but because they developed extensive intelligence networks through the war and post World War II, they kind of, that was a facade mostly. Like we were controlling information, everything was being monitored, etc. There was a lot of surveillance.
Seems to free.
Yeah. But before that, there was a fair degree of freedom with respect to free flowing information. Maybe the post definitely has been like mostly about this kind of contextualizing of communication with an American.
stagnation and then we'll shift to the second.
media has always existed, but not as an institution.
Conceptualizing it.
As a ideological form also, like with the American. So,
So there is this also, he spoke about this Norbert Weiner's book on cybernetics.
yeah. क्या है इसका नाम?
Norbert Weiner.
When you are leaving
N-O-R-B-E-R-T,
audience is
W-I-E-N-E-R.
power by effects. Or something like that.
So basically the book is cybernetics on control and communication in the animal and the machine. That's a 1948 book. So
Cybernetics.
cybernetics. So basically that is also somewhere what I frankly recall is that basically that book also tries to the existence of media, or let's say the formation of media, let's say in general the form of media, how we know it today. For example, in general this whole
Within the first year,
last few days
the word of the Oxford Dictionary and we
what
had to
is
come up with
the
the most important word. So most important word for that
the
particular
being of
was
media.
postwar. And Trump keeps on
A couple of times he said
reading.
that media ne bola, media
So when
ne
you're talking
media
about
ne.
Yeah.
So this whole
evidence, and
institution
then you're
of
also trying
media.
to understand what is the evolution of
Say for example,
I want to say how the evolution of
What to exclude and what to kind of, it's kind of logic doesn't
Are
matter.
we
Yeah.
so what is this bureaucracy?
now in a mindset we are talking about
Definitions and perspectives and
so when the
dimensions
very
and frameworks
question of postwar
which brings
and again
bureaucracy
somewhere
to
I
being.
feel the
So
usages of
similarly,
the again is the manifestation of
I think
mechanism.
the point is that post World War I,
I wanted to have Sir's view on that. So maybe we can ask.
bringing media into being,
Yeah.
that how that whole thing happened. I think
The being of media is actually very nice phrase.
What I'll
that's the
just keep on noting down.
thing he tried to.
Yeah. So I think till now that has been the kind of one overarching argument of the course. Media is not a given. Let's say it's not a preordained form. जो human existence में हमेशा से ही था.
Like for example, one can say oxygen.
Yeah.
Oxygen is there, but you can't see its existence.
Yeah.
It's only through experiments and
Only through chemistry and physics that you
prove that it's there.
yeah, something is burning, so you understand it's how oxygen is burning.
So, or rather, media is a plural.
Yeah.
Or mediums in general. But we don't talk about
We have a
print
method,
media to
focus group discussion and field
Yeah.
observations and field observations.
I think there was a time when people actually used to talk about mediums. They would not say medium as actually used to write a TV में
More than acceptance, it is
cinema
rejection.
देखा, you know. But now
अभी
it's
तो over encompassing is
and social media has had a part to play in that kind of convergence.
So, is how this being of media is how over a period of time. This is journey of last 100 years.
Broadly.
1920s में post World War खत्म हुआ, and then onwards till 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say
You are
actually
making
cinema
community with the-
as a cinema and radio. They have a huge role to play in this kind of institutionalization. The idea that moving images first and the idea that there's something live. So live wala element was never there.
ये भी देखिए मतलब although this is not discussed, in general if you say this is probably like slightly digressing from what we discussed, but if we let's say scriptures, say for Tulsi Ramayana. In a way, Tulsi Ramayana is a scripture, but it also tells you a lot of things about time,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So in a way, Tulsi Ramayana is media. One can say it's a media.
It is actually, मतलब खासकर the Tulsidas Ramayana is very important because it is the first time, according to historians, that Ayodhya is mentioned.
Correct.
Before that, there was no mention of Ayodhya in the in the scriptures.
But because Valmiki Ramayana is not conceptualized, or there is no framework to call it media.
No, I think
Maybe I'm wrong,
yeah,
but you call it
people are
scriptures.
People are doing this because I think it was the first time that why people are calling that particular movement as a mediatic thing, because one, it was coming as a confluence of different kind of art forms, right? And it was meant to be sung very differently. Before that, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata never meant to be sung. They were not in poetry.
उसमें prose नहीं था.
Prose इसमें poetry है.
Poetry, yeah.
So the Hanuman Chalisa, for example, is poetry. It's meant to be kind of sung. So the mediations and before that, it's to be taught as a courtly thing. कि अच्छा, kings have to be taught Ramayana to understand what to do and what not to do. जो होता है मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम. But very interestingly, and it's not in the Sanskrit. So there is again the mediation. अच्छा, what is so कहाँ पे लिखा जा रहा है वाराणसी में? क्यों? क्योंकि वाराणसी में
लोकल लैंग्वेज
जो नहीं वो तो है ही है, पर कौन बैठ रहा है उस टाइम वाराणसी? वहाँ पे बैठ रहे हैं वैदिक स्कॉलर्स, हाँ हाँ वो तो है ही, वैदिक स्कॉलर्स आते हैं, and there are imams who are sitting there, there are Islamic scholars who are sitting there, they are having a kind of back and forth. This is the height of the bhakti movement. A lot of these things are being challenged. You need conversions, for example, for people to be rid of caste society. And this is what the Islamic and the Christian theology would say, that you need to convert it, to come out of it. Bhakti movement would say no. Somewhere between this is, of course, Sikhism. Some mid ground between both the Bhakti movement and so it is coming out of Hindu daughter, but it is also articulating religious vision is closer to the monotheistic. So it's an interesting moment. So I definitely, people are definitely thinking about the Tulsidas Ramayana, and उसके बाद उसका immediate जो follow up है, that is the Ramayana show.
Right.
Again,
Yes.
the mediation of Ramayana becomes like an important movement. क्योंकि उससे पहले again with the whole religious kind of, especially this kind of this idea of gods and all. With the British, it wasn't like a national thing. It was like a very regional thing. Fine.
Even they did not touch that particular thing.
I mean, they were mostly like ठीक है. They were mostly left.
I mean, in a way, why they kept it that way is that somewhere they.
I don't think they understood how
नहीं
to.
ये नहीं था ना. They wanted to separate state from religion.
Yeah.
Because I think in 1857 when that whole thing happened over
Oh yeah,
the cow thing, so they realized that when you mix religion with state, it is going to cause problems to us. So let's just keep it aside. Let's play politics separately with it. Let them do the politics. We will deal with the state. So they kept them separately in 1857. And hence, I think in Indian context, I mean, context, when we talk about India to 1947, it was about freedom struggle. India just about nationalist narrative, nationalist stories, new stories within nationalist framework were covered, and whatever we talk about freedom movement or news or information associated with freedom movement was in India. So, but in 1947, this thing all of that changed. Freedom, that agenda moved, and then people started talking about social justice, started talking about.
No, I agree with this position to some extent. I think there was a lot of why the Indian Revolution is generally called a relative success, because there was a lot of social reform also being embedded. People like Ambedkar and all were very much present.
Raja Ram Mohan Rai too.
Yeah. Raja Ram Mohan Rai is not really interested in freedom.
Yeah, he was not. He was
He goes
supposed
to
get rid of
Dominion,
yeah.
Dominion,
Ah, yes, yes, of course.
but not specifically someone like a paper, for example,
Exactly.
and the presence of other people.
So it also becomes a trigger for future
Really
violence.
kind of changes how we think about the place. Although America did call it a thing, so I will not say it's like a, there can be one way in which the history of that time is. But I think what you're saying is interesting in the sense when we turn back to media, like there is a kind of, if you look at the discourse, that, I mean, a lot of the seeds of the current right-wing Hindu thing are sown there. Even within the progressives have what, because the Bharat Mata, for example, which was a defining, we talked about Varanasi, Gandhi, what Gandhi came to say there. Not accept money from the prostitutes or the tabayas or the, they were very willing to join the people, they did not let them. There are problems because they were bringing a certain kind of popular sentiment. He was like, no, I don't want my thing to be pure.
Kind of tell the
Yeah, of course.
everybody had their own issues. Rather had his own agendas.
Everybody. I mean, we were anyway not like taking a stance. I'm just saying because we're talking about media, it's important to kind of understand what, like, if we are to see what is the point of this course at this point. One is of course media. Media का growth जो है वो क्या है? So we can't, for example, remove what the Gita Press did during the freedom
Would come
struggle.
in today's lecture.
Partha Chatterjee's, for example, written on women's question in the national struggle. It's a very important question. कौन सी औरतें हैं जो part है? Imagine है तो सब क्योंकि everyone is like very popular.
It's entire book.
But what person do you think can actually claim, stake their identity within themselves? This is very important. Of media, because who is representing?
And
Price.
somewhere I mean I was
In artwork, in cinema, etc.
I was thinking that there's this Ambedkar which was
Yeah, 60s, 50s,
50s. So
when Gandhi died.
Price, media,
Has
access,
this
media,
Harijan is one version of his propagation of his
Gandhi
ideology.
said.
So Harijan. But when Gandhi writes for Gujarati context, he's a completely different person. He supports caste structure, he supports
Which I'm saying, so Modi and Gandhi can have a certain kind of linkage when it comes to media.
media, right?
Because the same thing as I said in class. 2002 में all completely and multimedia celebrity.
हाँ वही तो he was saying that split people.
It's not very comfortable.
Aligning very ways. So, but while regional media, somewhere, as you said, in Europaeum celebrating in Maharashtra, it was Samla, it was celebrating the whole movement. I think suddenly even many of Hindi news organizations were also supporting or let's say the whole the violence associated with conduct and agitation whatever.
Activism.
So it's very interesting that when we look at evolution of India in Indian
But I'm saying it's
why I'm talking about India because
us and them. But other films are even more problematic because there is
in American
them
context
is again a part of your own
they wanted to
us versus us.
free flow of
Then there is a phenomenon of othering.
called free flow of information.
You want to? No. Then we can. You're done. Then we can.
Through media we can ensure information.
I'm not the stand. The only chair I have.
But
Better than I
there was a balance between
report and then everybody.
I'm saying, I mean, in 18th century, the predecessor of Times of India. Because the newspaper completely commercial. I mean, there are so many examples. So,
I mean, I would say Times of India it's a Bombay Stock Exchange. The
commercial.
primary thing was to talk about
commerce and trade businesses.
and fairly sympathetic to the British. I have read that coverage of the Bhagat Singh bombing. Very, very sympathetic of the British. Bhagat Singh was a terrorist that in the colony. And it's very interesting because Hindustan Times had to apologize for, you know why? Because they were saying the legislators hid under the tables when the bomb was thrown. So they had to apologize the next day. He's saying, how are you making it sound as if the legislators are cowards and these people are courageous? It's very interesting.
Exactly, I was coming to that.
So I think most Hindustani media was actually quite supportive to the which is why the National Press Act was enacted. No, it was not English Press Act. It was because they were afraid कि अच्छा जो language हमें समझ नहीं आता वो क्या curve there circulation. I think it was the British who did it.
overnight changed its
But they had Indian reporters, Indian editors, etc. It's not like abhi bhi there are newspapers who have like foreign board members, but you can't really call them British. It's like it's a complicated situation.
Pose this question because you both are from media. What happens when norms are violated? How media tries to create a norm around some sectors and what is to be discussed, what is not to be discussed. Any example that you want to have? We talked about Schmitt people.
You have to give us an कोई एग्जांपल लेके बात करोगे तो हम बात करेंगे.
Also,
हाँ मतलब कौन से नॉर्म कुछ एक if you take an example the discussion can move forward. It's a right
they say that the whole liver but national media liver was found in 4 pieces. So that means the brutality of the is quite utilized. But the top 4 media houses are not actually showing news. So when you say it's like when you are not backed by your own, what else violation what are you looking for?
Actually, this can be a very good example. Let us take Harish something.
Chandrakar.
Harish Chandrakar. We can take the example. Murder is a problem, brutality is a problem, but not when the writing is coming.
Not when the
Writing is coming. So what is the
Mukesh Chandrakar.
This can be a very interesting actually to discuss first. Can you just repeat the question again?
No, I just wanted to know. People say that media is trying to build a norm or something that should be discussed more and something that should not. So media is kind of excluding something from including something from it. So how does that work? Let's say 1996.
There is this theory of media.
And of course there is a lesson. The unfortunate incident that happened in the government obviously center has its own agenda and the government also wants to have peace left. Then obviously there is a lot of politics involved. Somewhere, this is again my opinion, I have it wrong.
Because it's action, action, the sense of anxiety is not in
Enough
people's mind.
precaution
People
and
won't read your
sensitivity.
So,
Therefore, the question of audience, that is what I was looking at. Who is your audience? Media is not defined. Like, media is not like such a monolith.
right.
Like, there is, and media is pro-state media does not mean
proceedings.
Satish
They were
Dhawan, the government.
postwar.
If this was
State
Bengal,
did not follow that.
you would have
That's
been
why
like, it would have been
lawyer which was appointed by
like pasted across the
he
wall.
was asking those questions.
Look at the state of journalism in West Bengal. It's not
But somewhere in
because
entire thing has for first four days.
there is a gag, unofficial gag on the news. And that gag actually has kind of emerged from the local gag, which this guy was clearly violating. So he was violating the norm of that place in many ways. If the norm is to shut up
Unleash its
and
power.
not speak up,
The state
That incident in Kashmir that when the local guy was tied to army vehicle.
I think
Yeah.
all of this,
no one shield.
one of the reasons why it was
How does that
was
took a national media? Because I was not aware of
suddenly
that. It was in
It was a
19.
huge issue. It was a huge issue at that
Moral
time.
dilemmas were discussed.
No, this
What
is
kind?
not moral. This was a human rights violation, like an international human rights violation. And this was actually fairly, people are saying that this was based on Israeli plate. Israelis tie their vehicles so that Palestinian soldiers don't shoot or throw stones.
Russia as a counter, now we're not going to jail your guys who surrendered. We're going to put them on the top floor of our important building. So if you bomb them, we're going to first kill them. So, I think
But again, that is war.
question here is
This is occupation. So there is a bit of a.
obviously about media effects.
I mean, we have to make some differentiation because वहाँ पे दो आर्मीज हैं, यहाँ पे एक आर्मी है और एक सिविल है, so it's a different kind of. But I was just thinking, yeah, coming back to the question again, because it also connects to law. For example, he was exposing mining mafia, talking about construction and mining mafia, and the problem is that within that scene, everyone is kind of hand in glove with every other. The contractors, the corporates, and the politicians, all of them are together. They all need each other to kind of build profits. And if you're exposing that, you are kind of, it's in that zone of questioning what a norm is. What is the norm? Is the norm to remain submissive to the people that you elected? Or it is to question? That is actually fundamental norm, right now. So how do you, what is the job of media? It is to praise the government that you elected. जो भी करे doesn't matter. Or is it thing that you question, which is the job traditionally looked at as the job of question. So that is a lot of people have to answer. The other thing is that चलो वो एक norm का it's clearly, I mean, the law obviously and the law there are because the law clearly would say that what they're doing is wrong. Indulging in kickbacks and indulging in all kinds of problematic behavior, threatening people, moving them out for message. The complicated situation of norm and the clear situation of norm in that particular area.
Professor has told that it's somewhere between fact and norms.
Yeah. The other thing is that once the guy was dead, then it's a different case. So what you said, everyone is silent. The big four are silent. That is a different question. That is a question of the state of journalism in this country in general. Who is a journalist also? Because one of the first reports that came out was that Indian Express had, in their report, it said YouTuber killed, not journalists. So there is that differentiation also. Who is a journalist? Social media का जो इंसान हैं, if they are not working in legacy media, are they even journalists? So that is is also a normative test. Who is a generalist? It's a normative, it's not legal. You can't answer that in policy.
Also, in these cases are resolved in which best, it's usually a lone attacker who has no links.
Yeah.
This is some cousin of him because he was going to get exposed to the kingdoms. If he has no nexus to the big players, so you always see that they take a fast action, swift action. For data, they catch someone who has no links to is a lone wolf kind of a thing. Like the US media usually says that they think that it's going to end up in a racial kind of thing. They say it was a lone attack, lone wolf, no contact or anything.
And in a lot of cases they play this guy also. Get caught. हम आपके बच्चे को पढ़ा देंगे. It's a very normal. जैसे when influential people get involved in hit and runs, they usually blame the driver. वो 5 साल में मारा जाएगा. That's how they think about it. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's my point. It's clearly modern, so it's illegal. It's criminal, right? So there it goes.
The regulation of communication to organize a cartel.
Discomfort around recognizing him as a journalist, as doing important work, differentiation between. So I think what your to answer your question would be that the anti-state media is gasping for air. There is no monolith. They are gasping for air to maintain some kind of credibility or media as an institution. These things, and the same thing is with the legacy media is so uncomfortable for them to take a stand for something. I'm sure there's a lot of journalists, like, even in the US news, who want to say a lot of stuff. But on Israel they will be saying. That is what we're talking about. Yes, you will have Punjabi journalists, you will have Danish journalists, they and Hindu and these guys say some different things. But when it comes to certain things like Kashmir, for example, you will find like common sense. All of them will be silent. They will not say. That is, I think, somewhat close to what you mean. I don't think India is in a position to form one or to generate one television. It was very, very multifaceted, diversified. सबकी audience है.
From early 90s to 90s, the media moved from real news to thing. So if you open as the opens, take the number one biggest analyst, if you open as you will see actual news will be only 4-5, and rest all is who did what, who went to what house. So how they are moving from news to so they don't oppose it, or they don't get into process because they have all done some kind of corporate office. They've all done some tax evasion somewhere or the other. So they know they are done.
Tax evasion is your survival tactic.
You were in TV news media. You tell how the news
just like,
was.
you know, just
Because you have clearly seen the change.
what is it? Why I joined this program? Wanted to do this program is generally this whole understanding of become media people. That it's I did my mass communication from Squandered. It is it always was a question to me. When we call media, what is it that we are talking about?
Yeah,
say for example, if I say
it could be solve the ships.
just an example,
But one of the reasons why there was
there was this ad
people
achieving
go into business.
it's a campaign by Narendra Modi campaign team. That is
So
media.
again, it becomes very interesting.
And then there is
Okay, how
something like
there are economic interests and there are religious interests.
all these networks.
Everything, and particularly in developed nations.
Talking about
खाली बेटा बोलती नहीं है,
learning
everybody wants to have
what he
that.
said and what he did not say, how he is going to become like. I was at that time, I was in news at
It
that time.
backfired only because of economic reasons. There is nothing
I
else.
think August, September of 2017, sorry, 2013.
So nothing like that. Even those people
BJP's national convention in
very
Goa,
something
he was projected, they decided to project it as Prime
and
Minister.
their economic rights were not.
Now, the coverage of that particular event was such that it was almost like appointment of him as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the general elections, I mean, Congress power at that time, very much power. It was nowhere like struggling or something. Of course, they were struggling in terms of public perception, but they were not struggling like administrative or governance. And from there, from September onwards, the entire image media created. Now, I'm using a way, I'm using a word called media. So, when I'm saying that, I'm referring to news media. But when we were in February of 2014 or March of 2014, you see a change in India. YouTube was not prevalent because YouTube was there, but it was not so prevalent in those days. There was mainly through linear TV or regular YouTube channels and we came across this campaign. So here is this campaign with an agenda. It was carrying a message coming from BJP. And there is this very loaded, I would say campaign for news coverage of BJP, which is also creating so, the question really is that when we say media, conceptualization of media, being of media, in, let's say post-2020, or let's say 2010 onwards, and emergence of internet, what are we even talking about? You know, that's where the crucial aspect, like, for example, if you take example of Anna Hazare agitation in 2011, was it a media campaign? If you look at 13 minutes, it looks like it was a media campaign typically organized by few social media handles and over enthusiastic news organizations. So what constitutes news or what is news is basically defined by news media organizations. I remember I was in a news channel. I recall that when I was in the news room, I heard that some sort of revolution is going to happen. And in that charged atmosphere and charged feeling, I used to come out of news room for a smoke. And then I used to realize nobody cares outside. It really doesn't matter. So basically, the movement, once it is conceptualized, comes into being on media. So that somewhere raised a question over a period of time when studying media in class 13 or even. Is it something like even freedom movement was some sort of a media's case or was it there on ground? I mean, there are research on this also that now we call it that it is off hook or let's say where media is not involved but offline campaigns are coming. You create a hashtag somewhere. Say for example, meeting. Meeting is a completely online agitation. It's an online movement. You will not see something happening on the ground. But let's say hashtag Publicum. It starts from ground and takes shape on social media. Social media is on all these things go hand in hand. So, you know, what is really intriguing in all this is that we say for post 1940s, you know, in general we talk about media, being of media in Western context or Indian context.
who borrows concept from whom? That's the
Today morning,
intriguing question I have. That's what I wanted to understand from this course. So, it's very interesting that this, there are so many different things. Like, for example, what is politics?
Canada and Russia, you are sharing so much of
So yesterday there was this he presented JD Imperium and Republic this concept. If you look at it, politics is the where you are talking about implementation of social demands. Politics is when there is problems created in social demands. News media or media per se will not find it interesting because it questions somebody's authority. So it's not politics happens when it is in the layer of media. What is interesting is that how this whole things which are happening in abstract or something under the glare of or maybe away from media glare or away from behind the curtains, when it comes into open, how media picks it up and it becomes a very nominal information turns into news. Or a completely nominal draft, like a deciding whether this is a myth or what, film like Anand, they say that the one line screenplay में कहता है एक आदमी था बहुत हंसता था लोगों को हंसा हंसा के वो मर गया. That is the basic story of Anand. But it was developed into screenplay and it turned into material which could be converted to film. So for example, film like voice of Lata Mangeshkar, although Lata Mangeshkar is not in the screen, but her voice is acting in that film. So some books, last 3 days, maybe these or the literature that is shared. I felt that this program I should dedicate to that how
but then you had a moment
so-called media into some sort of access of information or catching that information or delivering that information. They created an institution and
I won't credit all of media to
why we
rather than forcing it through law or rather than forcing it to use of regulation, you create a area and create a right over it. Say for example, coming back to
now it's no more required.
his father he was a sannyasi. And then one day he realized that so he came back to and he married and 4 kids. So basically the that since you were from China to this thing, you need to with your money and your 4 kids will have no rights to learn the Vedas, Unipolar, any of these Hindus, or like other let's say Vedic scriptures. Now this whole command over what one would read or what one would have access to was held by the entity. Now, how to get over this entity is creating an institution, and that's where Lanishwari came into being. So Lanishwari is basically a critique of Bhagavad-gita. So what an institution like Communism propose, I will create something and it will impart knowledge to larger audience. So media is that where you want to get over an institution, not institution, not clutch of an individual or group of nations in some senses. You create media for reason. Say that's what I understood over
it is to disrupt. the functioning of existing
things.
Also,
Whatever
translation
but
can
the institutionalization of that disruption is what is the American problem. I think that is what we should so for example, scandal, rumor, etc. have always whispers have always been part of politics.
Yes, but the moment you put it into
It's
media
like
institution,
acha, this person is a journalist who will go to the ground and expose. This is a very
of course, this is my interpretation. Maybe
no, but it's a very perspective that I think it's an important intervention. It should be put in house with the story of Gandhi. Ganesh.
He belonged to, I mean, if we talk about contemporary terms, he belonged to the backward classes. OBC. Now, important knowledge, people were appreciating it. He had no audience. Again, because of
They have strangled us by not being other
again, it is about access to information they wanted to provide. That link to information, link to Gyan person was exploited by a bunch of people. And what was the method they chose to
those who got invited
curb the circulation of information? They asked to destroy his literature. There is a river called Brand, and they asked him to drown it. So he did that, he complied. I mean, whether it is reality or not, it is symbolism, so right? But he destroyed it. But popular perception was so strong that it came out of even out of that. So maybe that Ibrahim was able to basically
जो फिल्म में भी दिखाया है
film with it.
चंदू बराबरी फिल्म
So तब जो again coming from that literature is again emergence of text out of this
obscurity, I would say. I mean, yeah, it's
challenge
symbolic, but I'm guessing that it only noise literature अपने आप बाहर आ गया.
So basically it is again that media challenged an institution. ऐसे कईयों examples हैं.
तो ये important है और I mean अगर सही तरह का political हो तो ये सब बहुत legitimate challenges हैं to the hegemony of Western theory, very legitimate challenges.
But ये है ना कि आपके पास इसको किसी ने theorize नहीं किया.
Theorize किया भी होगा लेकिन होता क्या है कि वो again disrupt their concept. कौन बनेगा? Who will say no, it's not right? But these are very important, interventions, and I think this can only come from lived experience, growing up with these stories, hearing these stories around. Otherwise, you can't just. I can't. So, for example, अभी तो this is in Maharashtra. Examples of such kinds in Karnataka. I am not. How will I approach if someone doesn't go and bring that out and brings it to the canon? Yes. What we call canonization of theory. Who will say that? And, but I also think that it does not only need to be defined by national context also. You say Indian hair, foreign hair. But I think it's very important because it definitely brings in that kind of resurgent energy. The challenge is, or says that you might not take it as a given कि हाँ भाई वहाँ से support है. There are things that, but the institutionalization of media, I think definitely Americans have a part to play.
in that Ramaswamy was in Unipolar. Ramaswamy Brahman priest or something. And it was created that he was Guru of Shivaji. Why? Because non-Kshatriya could become a king without Ashirwad of him. There was no historical evidence of the meeting. But still the image got so
Shivaji is an interesting thing. Generally, like, he's not like fake fast. Like, very and he was, I think, from a marginalized. He was such a
It's very complicated and nuanced. What happens?
because as a British party also
alongside with
It's very much part of the local
So
politics.
isn't what is called Russian, but he has to found Islam, he has to show us in Pakistan, because Pakistan is
I mean, there are several versions of the story.
Yeah.
You have to his forefather, his grandfather, this place called Communism, which is in our district. He was very much belonged to a minority class. Nobody sure of caste, I mean, here, someone like me, I am really surprised that Hinduism or Hindu as a construct, Hindu as a concept, as a construct in 18th century. You don't find Hinduism in 20th century. So, calling Shivaji or anyone as Hindu but culture is there's no misplaced concept of it. If the concept is from 18th century.
It's like saying Akbar is Singapore.
Correct. But it's very how do you define it?
When secularism was, I mean, see, what is people actually don't use words, they use words syncretic, which is more kind of, it's like, see, actually, there has been an exchange of cultural values between different religions. Secular and all, you can all right,
वो तो रेडियो ब्रस्पीडिया से आया है
although it's very interesting, Akbar के time पे ही near about that time. But the still it's a very
the side becomes
it can't be like it's something that is out there.
interesting and
If you
politically
are
problematic.
if you are
On one hand,
in
you are
India
celebrating
in the 14th
the
of the century,
courage of soldiers.
you would have to
There
be
is
with
very right wing
different religions. You can't and there is something that
Yeah, what are these
आप कुछ सोच के निकालते हैं सारे
There's always a clash of ideology.
और हम तमाम बातें इसलिए भी कर रहे हैं कि हमें इंफॉर्मेशन का एक्सेस
Again,
or
or be there was this web series also not used to
ट्रांसपोर्ट का अगर साधन अवेलेबल है just because we communicate at a place using different means,
feature that it offers is that our soldiers were not being that's why they were captured by
even that supports
yeah. I mean, I would transport or mobility itself in media. I would say definitely is part of the enablers. But there are interesting things happening when you bring in technology within the automobile. So, for example, if you have to talk about vehicular media, if I was to call it, right? It would be about how technology has changed cars, trucks, trains, how infrastructure has electric lines, for example, have changed what we understand as train. Metro is a new thing, like 100-year-old thing. Trains have been
exactly, but then
बहुत so it's very interesting kind of even think about it. Like you said, the media is much more popular. Salt and speed.
not just Indian but all
It's
other
a really popular thing.
not just Indian, all other races. So he was just being continuous because he saw
This media credibility को check before social media came in.
हाँ मैं इसलिए आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ क्योंकि जैसे जो इन्होंने भी सवाल पूछा कि जैसे मतलब
linguistic way.
इस तरह की न्यूज़ जब पहुँचती है कि ऐसे कोई जर्नलिस्ट की और जब there is a fairly I mean biases were always there even in television but there was a fair amount of orientation towards generally a secular progressive in most of English language even to some extent even Hindi like in television media I won't say it was never there I have grown up watching Aaj Tak etc. ऐसा नहीं है कि लोग अच्छा जर्नलिज्म नहीं कर रहे हैं उन्होंने किया है so I would just want you to kind of comment on that कि when you were in during this time. This up here, what I see is like most of television news is just reacting to social media trends, which is why the overwhelming presence of hashtags even the news points. I'm like, what is happening? It's like like a chicken and egg thing, like a self-appropriating monster. Hashtag use कर रहा है फिर वो hashtag को respond कर रहा है फिर वही hashtag. I'm like, I'm thinking of slightly older, and this was not the only thing that people were kind of. So what was happening? जैसे ऐसा कुछ news आया कि सच सच इस टाइम में कोई पहले भी होता था ही रहता है.
Just try to explain. मेरे पास एक एग्जांपल है कि 2011 में close movement happened from Rajasthan to Indian Express को. So I saw it somewhere in Tehilka or somewhere. Credibility क्या है? Shekhar Gupta ने बताया. So what are the sources of credibility? Because no one's gonna search on internet that credibility. So
See, if I go back to 2002, I started on
Interesting, yeah.
this time I said I was a sports journalist.
Sports actually has a lot to do with the intersection of sports journalism has a lot to do with the growth of media industry in general.
Yeah, it does, but it is
Yeah.
when we talk about mostly ruled by personality like Narendra Modi. Narendra Modi was just part of the state cricket association for a short time. But I'm saying that it was controlled by one individual. It was earlier Government Army, then it was for a short time Unipolar, and then it was Arun Jaitley when he was at DDCA. We used to cover the BCCI से आती थी. So, but when I started working the general news organization, it is always a news reader. So, for example, in English news space it was NDTV, and in Hindi news space it was Aaj Tak. These two news organizations actually were news leaders. So, whatever NDTV covers, whatever Aaj Tak covers, used to become.
Guys, tea is ready. We can have tea and then we can continue the discussion. Maybe 5 minutes.
So, basically it was like
So please, you have so much to say to each other. But if it's agreeable, we can do what is been suggested. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
जबरदस्त प्रयत्न करतो रिटर्न कम्युनिकेशनच्या लोगोवर नेऊन थांबवतो घेणार आहे काय तर नाही मी पण नाही
मॅम आताच्या डिस्कशनचा ऑडिओ कितपत कॅप्चर झालाय झालाय का
हो केलं ते करा आवाज तेवढं क्लिअर नाहीये
काय होतंय लोक बघतायत ना बाहेरचे दिस इज व्हेरी सम टॉपिक्स आर रिअली सेन्सिटिव्ह
ब्रॉडकास्ट नाही करत आहे ना
पुढच्या वेळेस परत ज्ञान घ्यायचं आहे ना म्हणून
ओके ओके ना ठीक आहे चालेल.
अभी भी लाइव स्ट्रीम चल रहा है?
नहीं सर हाँ यस वहाँ पे लाइव स्ट्रीम स्टॉप कर दो.
अभी तो कोई नहीं है ना, तो चैट करेंगे वो लोग.
हाँ सिर्फ वो लोगो दिखेगा सर, कुछ
अच्छा,
रिकॉर्ड नहीं.
आता सगळं येणार इथे सराउंडिंग.
can all, can all take turns. I'm sure you have enough questions to spread across, everyone.
Yeah, jotted down few points, but again, there's so much of discussion.
Yes, yes.
And there are so many viewpoints.
I'm sure.
These are just few
I'm sure.
pointers.
I'm sure.
We also build on it.
I'm sure.
Started with the first reading and the trials and trials and like to call it mediatization of justice and using technology in the court. One of the question was a question of trauma, that when you film, then reliving that trauma of the victim or survivor to where will be. That's something we were discussing, and till now it is like in the courtrooms also. So is it how much ethical it was? That one of the questions, sir. And how, because here again we are talking about justice, like media, law, and maybe public, for the sake of public memory we were following it. But at the end of the day, justice is justice, whether it's through technology or and somewhere is it also killing the voices? Like, because voices is something important, and if this technology is killing the voices, then how we are losing it.
And in continuation that, recently Supreme Court allowed that certain hearings, they should be broadcast live on television.
Yes, yes.
So what happened earlier, something which was happening in a closed room,
Yes.
and then media used to report it.
Correct.
And obviously media was reporting it fairly, sometimes not fairly. But here the live broadcast has become a spectacle.
Sure.
So in one hand it has brought in transparency, but it also, the very broadcast has become a political issue.
Of course.
And then we are discussing unfortunate case of West Bengal in this medical college. So it almost become a tussle between state and the center.
Yes.
And how center, state manhandled it, and then there were two sides. And unfortunately, India, the literacy rate is already low. Media literacy is even low. So many people ended up committing contempt of court, because court had given certain orders.
I see.
Okay, and then the politician also did certain blatant violation of, and then few things got reported, and rest of the things they were not reported at all. And the biggest problem was the very purpose of broadcasting online, somewhere we felt that to some extent it is defeated. So it becomes a double-edged sword.
Sure.
So and then interestingly, the very phenomena we compared with the concept which you introduced in the previous was pharmacon. Media can kill and it can cure. So sometimes, and in media studies also we talk about effect studies. So when you are starting something, you have intended effects, but of course there are unintended effects which you tend to oversee. But when the process leads to a culmination, then you are also aware of those unintended effects, and this is how system improves. So all those things to be discussed.
Yeah, so borrowing on his point only, like not necessarily like we always, like that's how free flow of information is not necessarily a boon in that case. When it leads to unintended effects. Also, sir, images are more powerful, not necessarily when these images are used to reinforce a particular form of trauma or violence and lead to future violence, as we have seen in the case of the Gujarat, the report that you showed, where it was taken out of context and that person's life and he suffered because of that. So that was one. And the other thing is, would you like to continue?
Then there's a different this is clear.
Yeah.
There's a different reading.
Yeah. Oh, we are all discussing the first. Okay. So yes, sir. So broadly, what I was more interested in understanding is when those details of the, if you know about the Ajikar case that happened, if there was a doctor, female doctor who was
West Bengal.
Yeah, West Bengal. So there were a lot of details discussed, right? So initially it was only about how West Bengal's government has not acted fairly or with justice, but then it also became about the details of the case. And so I was just thinking about how Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's case was played out in America, where we saw, we were also able to access it here, and we could see the theatrics of it, right? So I was just thinking that how do we look at them methodologically also? What frameworks
are useful while looking at this kind of theatre that is created where the courtroom is a stage in a way, but it is also shaped by media outside of the courtroom. It should not just the camera that is shaping it, but also the outside influence, where Johnny Depp was able to create the narrative.
Who's that? John? Who?
Johnny Depp.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Right.
So he was able to create the narrative for himself through using his power, right?
Yes.
Which is similar in R.G. Kaur's case, where in the West Bengal case basically, where we see that central government saw this as an opportunity to actually
Undermine West Bengal
undermine West Bengal government, because they were not able to get that tip there. So, and that played out in the room. So I'm just thinking about the theatrics and what frameworks can we use to understand this kind of thing.
Also, and it became a documentary later on, which we could all access on an OTT platform. So the mere commercial vested interest of a trial, a courtroom trial, became subject for commercial fodder for all of us, and not only voyeurism. So it leads to a lot of complicated issues. Ethics.
I'm sure it's possible some of you also discussed these issues. I'm just wondering, should go around the room and ask if there's any other angles on this set of issues that came up.
Yeah, so I think two things. First, I think there is there's a long history, like Peter Goodrich just kind of outlined in his work. There's a long history of kind of the relationship between the reporting of court cases as well as its dissemination into the wider public sphere. Courts have historically been both iconoclastic as well as iconographic. So there is.
You mean iconophilic?
Iconophilic, yeah. So iconophobic and iconophilic, sorry.
Yeah.
So they are simultaneously heavily involved in a certain kind of image making while also being very afraid of the viral image in a sense. So court sketches have a very interesting history of being regulated by the courts, etc., by contempt laws. But within the specific case of the Indian Supreme Court, I think there is something that connects, that there is a bridge between the media reporting of cases as well as the live broadcast is something that a lot of people miss, is the reporting by bar and bench and live law, which publishes transcripts of conversations that take place between lawyers and judges in the courtroom. And the presence of that kind of transcript on social media creates a whole different media sphere around text, the relationship between text, law, and reporting, and media in general. Related to that is a classical division between what usually in legal discourse is called ratio decidendi versus obiter dicta. So ratio decidendi being the law that stays and is supposed to be precedent, versus obiter, which is supposed to be kind of
marginalia.
Yeah, but what has happened with the reporting of bar and bench and live law specifically is that a lot of the stuff that would otherwise you would never really hear of has contributed to a certain kind of star-making quality with both lawyers, judges, etc., which is why the disappointment with CGI Chandrachud, because he was such a media figure even before he became Chief Justice. People are expecting him to completely kind of radically change, but he completely kind of trashed a lot of that. That is one of the things that I wanted to say. The other thing about R.G. Kaur, I'm actually very, I don't know, I happened to be in Kolkata when the first protest took place. And actually, Pralay and I were actually also discussing it in our room yesterday, that that particular protest specifically felt to me like a protest that, I don't know, people were playing Shank and all in the protest. But it was really not something that had a very clear kind of vision of what justice is. Some people were demanding resignation of the Mamata government. Some people were demanding death penalty, castration. All of these old Nirbhaya moment punishments were kind of being re-invoked. So I was deeply uncomfortable with the R.G. Kaur movement when it started. Over a period of time, I actually went to the doctors' protest site in central Kolkata, which is where I actually saw interesting things happening. Also, how the city responded to its own self-image. So, for example, people were choosing not to shop during Durga Puja. Very interestingly, and it really so one of my relatives who has a shop there of merchandise, he said that people come to me and say that they won't buy stuff, even though they come and appreciate my stuff, they'll say they won't buy because they don't want to contribute to the economics. It's a very, very interesting way in which people of Kolkata protested. There was also
what does it have to do with the rape or?
So it was a very heavily Kolkata-led protest, and especially certain regions of South Kolkata, which are very CPM. CPM is the cadre is very active there. So and it was kind of, you know, almost treated as a dent on the image of Kolkata as a place which is safe for women. That is why the city was kind of responding to it in very, people of the city were responding to it in very interesting ways. But the doctors, and actually the day I went there, it was a very interesting sight for me because I've never seen it before. That there were multiple screens at which, and multiple loudspeakers where live negotiation was happening between Mamta and the doctors. So you could see Mamta on screen. I was standing here, the doctors are sitting, and Mamta is literally like on 5 screens, and there are like multiple loudspeakers, and she's live negotiating with the doctors that are sitting on right in front of me. It was really something, it was a media spectacle of its own. And I've never seen this before, never seen a sitting chief minister actively negotiating via screens and microphones. So it has a very interesting kind of presence, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were also talking about the question of media and law and how media needs to know what to show and what not to show. So Elvis actually pointed out recently someone has been murdered, some COO.
So the UHC CEO was killed in New York in December 6th. So that was a very public.
Sorry, who's
the United Healthcare CEO.
Ah, yes.
In
Thompson.
So,
Thompson. Yeah, yeah.
so
Louis
that was a very
Mannion.
publicized because there's a history of health insurance being deeply problematic in the US, and a lot of people were lauding the killing.
Yeah.
Basically saying it's just the working class coming against the bourgeoisie in a way.
That's right.
But at that time also we also had a lot of major publications writing reports that this kind of reaction is not totally appropriate.
Yeah.
It should not be. So that's like also another way of mainstream media trying to control the conversation. But I got access to this through Reddit and other social media. So there, like any posting of such news was met with like a backlash. This is them trying to control us.
Right.
And when he was finally caught, there was like a disappointment. But it also happened to be that he was particularly good looking, so he became a hero that way as well. And because of the public support for him, I think right now there's no jury that can be found for him. That's like one particular issue that they're having, because you have to have an unbiased jury, at least in the US. And there are different images. So like he's been classified as a terrorist, and there's like a huge cavalcade carrying him, which is also like a media theatrics of a way to indicate the dangers of one particular action.
Yeah.
So he discussed about like how this particular action,
Right.
and I think in the US, right, New Orleans had a shooting at like New Year celebration as well, and the next day I think New York also had a particular bombing, and you had the Trump hotel as well. So those are not classified as terrorist acts as well. So there's that particular aspect we're discussing, because where there is a social media presence as well, but there's another aspect of media. So that conversation coming up, and what was surprising to me is that a lot of my friends were like saying, "Yeah, how great, good job, this there." But I was wondering, because we are sitting in India, we don't have that context. So there was an interesting point to me, because even a teacher brought it up that she was like, "Great." So it is interesting to me because we are not affected by it, but it's also like a class war that we are supposed to like
Sure.
participate in.
Right, right. Very, very interesting discussions, obviously, and I mean, you know, I'm recollecting your question about what is justice and so forth. You know, the figure of justice is blindfolded, you know, and that's for a reason, because the vision is assumed to possibly interfere with their ability to judge impartially and so on. So so that all of your discussions, your remarks are bringing up this. In a way, we're still trying to absorb the novelty of media. This entity which we refer to with one word for all of its different technological channels and manifestations. That has been identified with some sort of natural force of freedom, as if this is an organic process of information simply moving around and, filling all available spaces. And that, seems to me, is what we can call, if we wanted to identify this, sort of larger post-World War II context, try to understand it, seems the Americanization of the world can be placed right here in this development, which could never have been allowed without American sponsorship, American promotion, steady American ideological argument, and technological developments that supported these ideological understandings, because information has always been treated as a scarce commodity, a commodity where, if necessary, artificial scarcities must be created for fear of the kind of issues you mentioned, Ajit, that you don't know what people with different kinds of literacy will do with it. I just want to say one thing about this question of literacy. I keep remembering what Gandhi's response was when the demand after Indian independence was that the vote should be limited to educated people. Yeah, and anybody know what Gandhi's response was? I mean, where we went with it, but Gandhi provided the argument for it. He said, I trust the judgment of illiterate people just as much. I believe they are as capable of judging the vital things in their life as the educated people are. And I'm sure if we thought about it, we can find many instances where educated people make choices which are ruinous for the entire society, but very good for themselves. Many cases. Yeah? So, and this is also one of the remarkable aspects of Indian democracy, which we ought to applaud, ought to commemorate, ought to remember always in such discussions, which is that we are the first mass democracy that gave the vote regardless of any criteria of property, education, etc. And we made a go of it in some sense. We have had peaceful transition of government for 75 years. That, if you look at the pessimism with which such a question was regarded before, that is extraordinary. For all of our troubles, it is worthwhile hanging on to that memory, yeah, and that sort of Gandhian optimism, and trying to. So then the job would be to sort of fructify that optimism, to make it real, to realize it, and not to go back to older hesitations, which could land us in new kinds of trouble. Yeah. Now, this how to. I mean, at one level, we might say, this. The way in which the news comes to us always presents a sense of a crisis, an urgency, something that we must know about, something that would affect our lives, something that might change our lives, something that is non-negotiable. We have to pay attention to it. Drop what you're doing, because this is what everybody's thinking about. So, I mean, you may call it philosophical, but I want to say, is it, can we think about stepping back and ask, what is this urgency that we are continually swept away by time and time again, so that our attention is not our own, our time is not our own, what we focus on not our own, it's not clear how much it is going to affect us. And we move from one crisis, from, a society of distraction. Not each of the issues has importance. No doubt they need to be resolved. No doubt they require public input, but the scale of attention given to it. Here we're talking about Johnny Depp, and so there's that is something. We're not going to change it by this conversation, but it's important to have another perspective on it, that we're not obliged to ricochet along with the media ricocheting of information. Yeah. Now the first question you asked about trauma, a more difficult one. Yeah. Because as I said yesterday, there is always there are norms about what is permissible and what is not permissible, and with the centralization of communication, it becomes possible to play with the norms, to push the norms in one way or another, to even violate the norms and then utilize that violation for particular purposes. We are seeing each of these things happening. Furthermore, when we are dealing with global audiences, how are we going to manage the discrepancy of norms across these, highly diverse audiences? Here I'm remembering the Danish cartoon controversy. I don't know if some of you remember that. It was the Jyllands Post in Denmark, which gave their readers a competition. Draw pictures of Prophet Muhammad, and we'll publish them, the best pictures, most interesting, most provocative, whatever. And not surprisingly, the readers came up with highly insulting posters. First of all, there's a ban on depicting the Prophet. So that the idea itself was, to say, uncivil. It was not cosmopolitan. It was not respectful of the existence of a global public where sensitive feelings could be deeply violated. In fact, it was an intentional violation of those feelings. Yeah, and so while the Western countries were complimenting themselves on how much more enlightened they were, that they could violate the image of the Prophet, and because they were so enlightened, while failing to see that this was an insensitivity which they were exhibiting to the whole world. Yeah, so the question of trauma cannot be a one-sided. There's no one-sided answer to it. Yeah, it would have to be a situated discussion about a situated issue, situated problem. Here we can talk about the Nuremberg trial itself, right? The Nuremberg trial itself and the surprise, surprise, the American idea to mediatize justice, as you say, right? And that is, crimes against humanity. This notion that never before in the history of humanity had such crimes been committed. In a sense, it is true. Okay? In a sense, it is true because this was applying the technologies and techniques of industrial production to the destruction of human beings. The very beings who were supposed to benefit from industry were being rendered into the objects of destruction by supposedly the greatest achievement of civilization, which was, modern industry. Moreover, as again I think I said yesterday, the technology functioned as a means of disavowing agency. That is, you could do the act and claim you did not do it because all you did was press a button. You don't know what's happening, behind the screen or against behind the wall or whatever it is. So that brought up the question of what is our understanding of technology and our relationship to it. Clearly, not very deep at all, right? It is allowing us to implicate ourselves in forms of violence that we would not want to actually participate in, that we would, not actually accept at all. So this is not only about the killing machine of Nazi mass murder, that also applies to the media, which is also a set of technology or a set of technologies. And here I think we can just sort of keep this notion of the pharmacon before us against this idea of communication as a panacea, as bringing all good things always, whenever it comes, that communication is production of harmony, somehow American style, which again is it's a crazy idea, but maybe it even underlies some of our remarks today. It's not an idea we can get rid of very easily, I suggest. We're all educated to take it seriously. So that's maybe not a comprehensive response to many points, but if you have follow-up, I'll be happy to hear.
Holocaust.
Yeah.
And about, there's this other fiction movie called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which also does not show any scenes of horrific violence, yet it implies everything that happened during it. And in the scene, my point here is to then understand what counts as evidence, per se, if we don't show anything. In this case, the Nazi officer's son himself gets gassed because he believes that, in one of the propaganda films it is shown that the Nazi camps are like all fun and games, and there's a lot of fun and people are fed well. So he befriends a Jewish boy on the other side of the concentration
This is the
camp.
fictional story.
Fictional story.
Yeah.
And there's no violence shown. It's just a friendship between two boys, a Jewish boy and a Nazi boy. And his father's stationed in one of the concentration camps as the commanding officer. So he befriends him, and then he finds out, because they're little children, so they don't understand what the concentration camp is about. So he says, my father works all day, and then he goes somewhere, I don't understand where he goes. They take him, and now he's missing. I can't find him. And he's so intrigued because this boy is so bored. The Nazi boy is so bored, he has nothing to do in his, so he says, can I come to your side and play with you, since you guys are having so much fun? Because that is what is shown in the propaganda movie, that, everyone's having fun in the concentration camp. So he disguises himself as a Jewish boy, supplied clothes, as the prisoner. He climbs to the other side, and then he gets gassed. And that's the end of the film. So, that's my point. If we didn't see it, then didn't it happen? Didn't happen. So what counts as visual evidence per se? If we don't show anything, if the media does not show any visual evidence, what counts as evidence?
Yeah, well, evidence has historically been testimony. Yeah, it's you witnessed it, somebody saw it, somebody was there. So the act of witnessing is actually what historically the trial sort of consecrates and builds its case upon. And this act of witnessing is always there's a duty in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., there is a large sign as you enter. I am your witness. I am your witness. And this is being said by basically God to Now that idea of witnessing, which we even have in our culture, which are every culture, popular understanding, common sense. My mother would say to me, I'm your Sakshi. And, she's a village girl, she's not educated. But this understanding of a kind of like juridical procedure, and the ability of ordinary people to judge is there in the culture. And what the court does is to maybe specialize it, to some extent alienate it from the living culture and segregate it, lift it above, to give it a kind of authority. So maybe what the media are doing is to restore this sense of popular ability to judge. And it is remarkable that regardless of literacy, the human capacity to judge the morality, the correctness of an event is, extends far beyond what you would think of as, the educated skills and so forth. Everybody does actually have it. That is part of what we, call human. So while the ability to judge may be sort of stimulated, perhaps the ability to work through the procedure, that's where there is a lack, right? Because of sensationalism, because of market competition of different media. So then we have to, at some point, be able to also step back from the media storm and recollect the sort of blindfolded position of the goddess of who's holding the scales of justice. That immersion is not always helpful. Yeah. Yes.
So very interesting counterpoint to the boy in the striped pajamas is actually the zone of interest.
Ah, yes.
Because the very problem of visual evidence has been tackled in that film. Because while the boy in the striped pajamas, it's actually a fairly criticized film also, because it says that deaths matter when the Nazi boy dies, but otherwise throughout the film deaths are happening, but the film doesn't really address it. I mean, I don't entirely agree with that position, but because of how melodrama as a form, etc., positions morality, but that's a different conversation. The zone of interest actually puts sound front and center, and that is where a lot of the debate about the visuality of evidence is challenged. How do you so what happens in that film is that it's the same premise. There is a family almost living like a suburban utopian lifestyle right next to a concentration camp. And the thing is, you never see any person in the concentration camp. You only see a building and you see smoke. And you hear gunshots, you hear screams, and it's all in the background. So I watched it in the theater, and it's a completely different experience if you either have earphones on or you are in the theater, because the sound, and it won the Oscar for sound design, because the sound is mixed in a way that you also hear the screams at the back of your head. You don't hear it coming from the screen. So what happens is that completely disturbs what we think of as evidence. Do you think of sound when you think of evidence? It's a very important question, and it brings back orality into the debate. It brings back the essentiality of trauma, of sound in trauma studies. And very interestingly, the only time you actually see have you seen the film?
Yeah.
So when you actually see visual evidence is towards the end, when it flashes into the present. And it's, I think, the Holocaust Museum.
Yeah. I'm not sure where it is.
There is a janitor who's cleaning the floors. In the end, and you see glass. Behind glass, there are thousands. I mean, more than, I think, probably millions of shoes of discarded. That is how the film ends, and it's almost like an echo, because the film then flashes back to the Nazi officer. It's almost like the present is signaling him to stop. And it's really kind of a masterful film when it comes to representing the horrors of the Holocaust. Also, another forgotten sense is smell. Because it's very interesting, because what the family does is creates all these meadows because flowers smell nice. And the thing is, the stench of burning bodies is very, very strong. They apply perfumes, all of them, so that the stench is out. It's a very fascinating kind of film. When you think of sound, it makes you think about sound, which is very neglected in evidence.
No, that's, I add my voice to that recommendation.
But Shoah sir is also similar, but Shoah is extremely
Yeah, okay. So So now we're entering this sort of field of Holocaust studies and Zionist interests, and that's another, where are the non-Jewish people? Why is the Holocaust being weaponized? And one country is using it to terrorize. So, and while Shoah is a great film, many questions can be asked about its choices.
The same goes with similar kind of debates. Again, I'm adding to the Holocaust discussion. Schindler's List, and Spielberg himself is a Jew, and then he was asked. In fact, he was not very happy with the script because Schindler, suddenly, who is a businessman, suddenly he become a savior for that entire community. Then how that change of heart, you will show it on the screen. And that's why in the entire film, there's only one instance where that girl who is wearing that red dress, only that red color is seen, and then till rest of the film is black and white. Now again, there are so many critics because only a death of a girl would cause change in heart. So again, that becomes problematic. And then Spielberg was also criticized a lot for, because then millions of people are right in front of you and you are aware. And then that didn't change your heart, and suddenly one girl, little girl, and then you see her body, and then you see a glimpse of that red dress, and suddenly that change you as a person. Then again, that becomes slightly problematic. So, talking to, I just have a question and I'm not sure about it, how to phrase it, so I'll try at my level best. You said Mahatma Gandhi, obviously, when he said, I trust the common sense of uneducated people.
Yes.
But in India, the problem is, and this is something, it has worsened post the advent of WhatsApp and the free kind of internet provided, not free but relatively lower, cheaper internet provided by Jio. The problem is people are still not able to understand the concept of fake news. And what is happening, what media is giving them, the information which media is feeding, often for many people, what media is telling, it becomes the absolute truth. So for example, very jumla of 15 lakh, and people are, I've seen many people who are spending and then thinking that you'll get that money somewhere, which you are not going to get. So the point here is, in our social experience when we are living, we can see reality. But if you go back to the Gerber's very old model, which talks about perceptual dimension, so there is always AB, X1, X2, X3, X4. So that X is a reality created by media. So where, somewhere what I am doing is I am trusting media and what input media is doing, and then whatever socio-cultural milieu that I am part of, whatever my ethical framework is, and the factors which are given by media, the information which is given by media, I kind of cross-check that with my own ethical framework, and then I decide what is right and wrong, and based on that I vote, based on that I participate, based on that I condemn certain people. So then that dimension becomes problematic. So somewhere people still, ethics and morality, that common understanding that people have, that's there. And again, literacy and being literate and illiterate doesn't make a difference here, because if literacy was making you a great human being, then we would have never had corruption in any of the institution anywhere, because then everybody is educated and people are working there. But the problem here is, basic literacy is one aspect, and the second aspect is media literacy. And then with media literacy, plenty of manipulation is happening. And last week I was really surprised, Lokmat, which is a leading Marathi daily, and they had created front page, the front page was designed in such a way, actually it was an advertisement, but it was framed like a news. So a person who is teaching media from so many years, even I, for a few seconds, even I got confused. That it was actually, so then educated people are getting confused, then common people, it's an abyss of misinformation, in which people are drowning.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think for some days now, the Times of India has shown that even its masthead is for sale.
Exactly.
And you have to see that these are very new developments. These are sacred spaces that are being violated, but nobody is there to say it. I mean, okay, in Gujarat it happened in 2002 itself. Sandesh had already sold its masthead, but when you experience the bureaucracy in India, it is a very low trust culture. But when you immerse yourself in actual, community life, it is a very high trust culture, extremely high trust culture. You ask people a question, it's quite possible you'll just get the truth. you know, where in some other societies you have to give them drugs and tell them, you know, here. So I think we are being buffeted around by the forces of, you know, that, and we are going to experience all of the discomforts and discontents that come with it. I mean, I think when you have a government that's prepared to do it, right? So the long-standing assumption that governments act to promote knowledge. If governments act to diminish knowledge, if governments act to promote ignorance, there's a scholar called Stanford historian, Robert, he talks about agnotology, the production of ignorance, agnotology, production of ignorance. You know, so we are experiencing the active obfuscation of reality through various means in different contexts. Yeah, this is a book called Golden Holocaust by the historian whose name escapes me, where he points out that it was with the tobacco industry that the most significant development in public relations happened, which was the production of not, you know, you buy this food or you trust this company, the production of doubt. And the public relations consultants would say, doubt is our product. So when there was massive evidence that smoking causes cancer, the tobacco industry generated mountains of communication to say, is the science correct? What are the scientists saying? What percentage of confidence can we say 100% smoke a cigarette, you will get cancer? Actually, it's very small. They're doubtful. You know, maybe you can smoke, and so many people, they die at 98. You know, Bertrand Russell smoked all his life, 98. He was fine. Winston Churchill, 92, he was having a cigar in his mouth all the time. So, what is this? Doubt. I mean, the science is not perfect. So the critique of science, which actually came from, you know, the left wing, traveled over into the right wing. And the production of doubt was then applied to climate change. Is it true? No, we can see that maybe the science is not very good. Let us examine the science very carefully. All said by non-scientific people. Yeah, so that's the kind of world we are in now, and there's no theoretical solution to it. Ah, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you were mentioning science, and yesterday also when we were mentioning religion, and then there's always other side when the religion of the science. The question is how do one authenticate the science also, like you were saying.
Yes.
And I think recently by Alenka Zupankic in her book Dissolver was recently published. She mentioned this somewhere, but again not answering this. But I think she has addressed this somewhere.
Right.
How do one authenticate this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, you know, we move from, say, I mean, to simplify the question a bit, you move from Newtonian science to Einstein. Newton science, you know, is predictive, you know, it's a predictive science, law-like statements about, you know, how the world works. Einsteinian science, because, you know, from 1903 onwards, you know, subatomic particles and so forth. In a way, it's a production of doubt. In a way, it's a production of doubt. You know, is light a particle or a wave? You know, when light travels faster, you know, what happens? You know, it's and Einstein himself resisted the implications of his own theories, saying God does not play at dice. You know, because one was driven to, you know, stochastic model of understanding events. So, I would say that yes, of course there are debates in science, but this is a political use of those debates to cloud things that are perfectly clear. That if you smoke, yes, it's likely you'll get cancer. It's just, and you had people who were supporting the tobacco industry because they were paid to do so, and so I mean the extent of the sort of willingness to work with interests that were against the public interest was very high. Yeah, and we can see that that's continuing now. I mean, all the corporations had said yes, we want climate change. Now Trump doesn't want it. Yeah, okay, fine. Never mind. Never mind. Sorry. Meanwhile, we are at a breaking point in the climate. Within a few years, where West Antarctic ice sheet is already cracking. Coastal cities are being inundated as we speak. So where is the rationality that we can sort of appeal to in these kinds of issues? Yeah. Yes.
Like, let's say something like Tulsi Ramayana. It's like Ramayana written in Braj Bhasha, composed in Varanasi and for a specific kind of audience, or taken it to masses. From Valmiki Ramayana to taken to Tulsi Ramayana. So basically, with the conceptualization of media, or media as a being, can we call Tulsi Ramayana as media?
Sure.
Because it was converting Valmiki Ramayana, which is in Sanskrit, to a local language, or to colloquial, or a language which is understood by masses.
Yeah.
It was bringing to that medium.
Absolutely.
Is in a way language was acting as medium in then.
Yeah.
So in a way Tulsi Ramayana is media in many ways. The same conceptualization can be applied to, let's say, there is one very celebrated and well honored scripture or text in Marathi that is called as Tukaramacha Gatha. It's like
And yesterday we heard about Gyaneshwari.
yes.
Yeah.
So basically, it is about the knowledge or spirituality, or that explained by Tukaram, Saint Tukaram in Tukaramacha Gatha. But a very influential community at that time, a Brahmin community, wanted to restrict that knowledge from masses. So they asked him to drown it in river Indrayani. So he complied, because somewhere he felt that it is something I will have to comply. But he wanted to take some call.
He drowned his text.
In river Indrayani. And for 3 days he was sitting there saying that if I am wrong, if what I have created has no validity, let it drown. It doesn't deserve to exist in this world. But the story is that the entire text came upon up in the water, and people celebrated that day, and the people who ordered this this draconian thing, they suffered, and all those things are there. But again, that can we call Tukarama's Gatha as media, because it was like a restriction put on by a community. To overcome that, Tukaram created something, and that acted as media. So again, Jnaneshwari has similar story, that somewhere, because of Jnaneshwar's father was a sannyasi, he taken sannyas, and again he came to Grahasthashram, and Jnaneshwar was born out of the wedlock. So basically, not out of the wedlock, but after the wedding and all that. But somewhere the elites of the society felt that his Grahasthashram, Jnaneshwar's father Grahasthashram, is not valid, and they ordered prayashchit to Jnaneshwar's father, that he should kill himself and his wife. And Jnaneshwar and his three brothers and two brothers and one sister, they were orphans. And Jnaneshwar created,
because the father
he
was put to death.
Yeah, suicide. So, and that was ordered by, again, elites of the society back then. So Jnaneshwar actually critiqued Bhagavad Gita and created Jnaneshwari. So, and that is again in Prakrit, that's not in Sanskrit. The language which was spoken in those days in 12th century Maharashtra. So can we call Jnaneshwari as media? So that was something, the kind of discussion we had in that.
So to answer this question, I'll go into philosophy. So, what do you say? Warning. So the German philosophy, okay? Hegel, okay, who was Marx's most important influence, and what Hegel, responding to previous philosophical arguments by people like Kant and so on, what he tried to do was actually to reconcile religion and science through his philosophy. That was his aim, to reconcile religion and science. And he conceived of this idea of the spirit of reason. The spirit of reason, which is kind of spreading throughout the universe and infusing its influence, in every corner of the universe. And this action he calls mediation. Okay? So it is through mediation, Hegel argues, that the world is going to be brought into the sphere of reason, which is reconciled with theology, with with right values, so to say, and a process of harmonization will happen through media. So the word mediation, when Hegel used it, was about harmonization between religion, philosophy and science. Philosophy will do this work, but religion and science will be reconciled with each other through the work of mediation. What is mediation? It brings different things into contact with each other, into relationship with each other, and in the process it changes them, right? It negates their or overcomes or changes their existing state, brings them to a new state where a durable form of reconciliation can exist. And so that was his idea. So mediation, as it was originally conceived, the concept, it had a theological component. It was a theological idea that we can bring all of the world and all of its various elements and diverse irreconcilable forces, we make them reconcile with each other. That was the kind of both reason and kind of maybe theological belief, optimism, expectation were all involved in this notion of mediation. Now what has happened is that Hegel has become probably the most important philosopher for Western modernity, without doubt. Yeah? And incidentally, he also read Indian philosophy. He was not unaware of it. He, had interesting questions about it and so on. The choice of the word media by someone like Marshall McLuhan, who was all very well read, he knew what he was doing. He was himself a believing, devout Catholic. Yeah, the choice of media that he utilized was not also devoid of theological content. He was, in a way, a white Western male who did believe that colonization, imperialism is eventually going to reconcile all the different parts of the world and bring them to a higher and better stage of, existence. And he saw media as, technologies of communication. By naming the media, he was hearkening back to that Hegelian notion that the work of modernization, you would call it today, is good. Is good, and it will improve life and bring all of the world together into one orbit. But when the word media was used, somehow it shed that theological baggage, or we did not look at it. We did not look at it, we were able to ignore it. Of course, we are all secular, we are not going to say God wants all of us to be, in harmony with each other, but that as the world is growing further and further apart today, we can reflect that the optimism about media, we can be more aware of that theological root. And yes, we want to make the world reconcile, and, of course, but without the false illusions that the theology might have provided then. Yeah? So, to be more realistic about what communication can do and, the dangers that it also brings. You can see those dangers. Yeah? Yes. Sure, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. So other departments were not interested. I see. Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Mm. Yeah. I see. I see. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Of Tukaram Gatami coming out is a symbolic.
It's like Jesus walking on water.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but the term mediation can be applied. It's not necessarily something very special. I mean, so to say, everything mediates. question is, to inquire into the process of mediation, because it's simply about, we are in the same space, the space is mediating, the light is mediating. So, having said that, we have to say something more about it. What is the meaning of that mediation? What is its significance? But mediation itself is, at that level, quite banal, right? It's happening all the time. It's simply a way of describing things.
Hindu, not Hindu philosophy, but even what we got as a tradition. I mean, again, there is this text Pasayada. So there is this line in that Martanda je tapahina je sarvahi sada sajjana soye hotu. So which means that let me meet people who are knowledgeable and those who are wise, but let them be calm and without any ego. Martand is a tapahina. Martand is basically a person of great knowledge, having a lot of wisdom, but sometimes such people are not accessible, not possible to have a conversation with them. But let me meet such people who are down to earth, wise, yet very, very humble. So again, it is an explanation or somewhere a ideation of media, what Yaneshwar was trying to put through Prasadam. In a way, I mean,
Sure.
that's my kind of
Also,
interpretation.
context that he's probably referring to the people who were inaccessible or
Right.
ostracized his family, right?
Right.
So he's also referring to them as not being calm.
No.
I mean, I'm reading into that's how I've always seen.
I see nobody's responded to this idea that the Americanization of the world, it's a big statement. We are demonstrating it without acknowledging it in a way. Yeah?
Last 3 days discussion. So
Yeah.
in a way, it's like Americanization of the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
We could have understood this otherwise. Rather than calling it Indian knowledge system, there is a different way of interpretation.
No, but maybe you should ask, should we talk about de-Americanization? Is that something we need to consider? Since we've given ourselves without reserve, yeah?
I shouldn't say us, maybe for me, that to say that word and to actually recognize that phenomenon, basically. Though I understand now that yes, it definitely exists, but please help us in making more sense of it.
And, we haven't really talked about artificial intelligence, but that is, proves all the, what we've been saying abundantly. Yeah? I mean, they have no idea what will happen when algorithm-driven machines that can learn by themselves are taking decisions in nanoseconds that cannot be corrected once they are taken. And we have no idea what they're doing because we cannot think so fast. And yet, AI, tech stocks are booming and everybody wants to invest in them. And we're investing in something, it's like a runaway train. You don't know where it's going. So Henry Kissinger, no less, wrote an essay in the Atlantic Weekly, monthly or weekly, called The End of Enlightenment. And of course, being Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmitt came along and paid him a lot of money to write an article saying the exact opposite a few months later. And Kissinger was happy to do that also. But I thought his earlier essay was better. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, the American media has all along fantasized about its death, destruction. They cannot imagine, a happy ending, actually. They can't. That's right. Yeah, which is in any case, yeah, exactly. It's a capitalist lesson, right? Survival of the fittest.
Wilson also said it's easy to imagine end of the world and the end of capitalism.
Then the end of capitalism, exactly. Exactly. That's very, very good point. Yes, with every failure of capitalism, there's not been enough capitalism. We need more capitalism. So it's the poverty of analysis. How are we doing for time? All right. So, break for lunch?